Hi, good afternoon to everybody and welcome. Before we start, could I just get somebody to tap into questions panel to say they can hear me okay? Brilliant, thank you very much to all. I appreciate that. Don't want any more gremlins now, do we? So I'm Barry John Graham, one of NQA's regional assessors. I hope we'll find you well, and whilst of course looking forward to the weekend and the good weather, at least ready to sit with me for about half an hour while we delve into a topic which I know is very close to home for many people and certainly a lot of organisations out there at the moment in this climate. So today we're going to examine business continuity, and specifically there we're going to look at ISO 22301, which is a business continuity management system. This is, as suggested in the title, just an initial look at the standard in very, very broad terms, just to provide an understanding of what the standard is and how it works with Annex SL. There will be a brief look at some of the technical requirements of the standard today, though this webinar is not a comprehensive implementation guide. However, fear not, we are working on that and one will be available for you soon. So let's continue into the presentation and examine 22301. So you can put a name to the face if you've been listening to on webinar, that's me. As shown on the slide, there is a facility to engage with questions. Some of you have demonstrated that already. Whilst I'm happy for you to tap those questions into the panel as we go through this presentation, I'd like to keep it till the end before I address those questions, and I will get round to any question you may have. Important though, you will receive a copy of this slide deck and a recording of the webinar once it's complete. So as always, if we skirt over something or power through an event which you'd ordinarily like to dwell on, then you can do so in the aftermath of the webinar. A quick run through the agenda. You may have received some of this information from our marketing team. However, just using the screen as a guide for the next 25 minutes or so, you can see there are a number of topics to fit in. So we will touch upon all of these things without going into a great deal of detail on any. But let's start with NQA and who are we? So NQA is a world-leading certification body who span the entire globe. This map gives you an indication of where we are very strong in terms of certification, being #1 for aerospace in the Americas, #1 for telecoms and automotive sector globally. We will help all of our customers deliver their products and services. We've been doing this for over 30 years now, and during that time, we've issued 50,000 certificates globally. Once a customer uses NQA as a partner to achieve their goals, a long-term relationship is usually established in most cases. So you can definitely count on us. So since its release in 2012, ISO 22301 has made a dramatic impact on how business continuity programs are designed, managed, and improved. The standard provided a coherent approach to developing a business continuity management system, and uses straightforward language, which helps organizations understand the minimum requirements for effective business continuity and ensures holistic preparedness for all types of business, regardless of their size or their sector. It would be fair to say that 22301 has successfully guided organizations in establishing and evolving effective business continuity programs and introduced a common language for all organizations to discuss business continuity planning processes and BCP capability. In 2019, 7 years after its initial publication and in compliance with ISO requirements for updating previously issued standards, the ISO Technical Committee with responsibility for 22301 issued its second edition. This is the version that's in use today and is very recent, as you can see. So why do you need 22301? Preparing for a disaster or trying to scan the horizon for threats to your organization is something we've all been doing for as long as we've been here. Some of the very worst things that can happen to us today are beyond of our scope and control, none more so than the pandemic we're living through right now. Nobody, I anticipate, would have seen this coming. However, there is much you can do and should be doing, and this is where 22301 comes into its own. It allows organizations an opportunity to plan for the future by reflecting on what their primary business aims are and taking relevant steps to protect that. As with all ISO standards, it's an indication to customers and stakeholders that you can meet their requirements regardless of the circumstances you find themselves in. So I'm often wary of tick boxes, but simply put, it was hard to get through this composition of this webinar without indicating some of the things that 22301 can help you with. The benefits simply cannot be overstated. They're not a hard sell to make. The organizations who had this in place prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and the response from various governments worldwide are doing far better than those that didn't, and that's a proven fact. There is no empirical evidence I can point you out to say these are the statistics to associate that statement I made. However, from being on the road and traveling around, anyone with a 22301 or business continuity plan which addresses their other management systems are in a far better place. So as mentioned there are other standards which require some kind of business continuity considerations, primarily ISO 27001. And a question I'm often asked relates to 27001. Those familiar with the standard might be aware of the requirement to implement business continuity arrangements as part of the control set for the risk profile. That simply means they've got to understand how to continue service provision and critical functionality using in their IT support services, quite simply and crudely put. And though it is a great control mechanism for risks, it doesn't really specify continuity of service provision as a requirement. It's more specific to information infrastructure, and that requires the addressing of IT assets and associated support services to business processes, not the business process itself. 22301 requires a greater scope and approach and ensures that an organization identifies critical business functions. Those functions are then resourced accordingly and roadmap back to functionality from an event which has prevented regular routine activity. Information security considerations will naturally be folded into this process, which is more holistic than 27001. So there's some brief advantages and differences between 27001 and 22301. But what is 22301? As stated in the first clause in 22301, the intended purpose of the standard is to enable organizations to protect against, reduce the likelihood of the occurrence of, prepare for, respond to, and recover from a disruption when it arises. And this is done by establishing, operating, and continuously improving a business continuity management system. The standard is a requirement standard, and that means it's written to enable auditability and to demonstrate compliance to stakeholders, third parties, and customers. However, the primary driver behind 22301 was to allow organizations to realize increased business continuity performance and ensure resilience and recovery during times of stress. Overall, if you've got a copy of the standard, it is available for free. As you read the standard, remember it is written in a manner that introduces topics so the wording is applicable to everybody, and that's regardless of geography, size, structure, or purpose. And this includes not-for-profit entities and those in the public and private sectors. In other words, the content is high level and describes the what, not the how. 22301 describes business continuity planning concepts using clear, straightforward language that can be used by anybody in an organization to plan for, implement, and improve a management system. And that's regardless of experience or job title. The standard enables anybody tasked with leading business continuity planning within an organization to understand its concepts. The standard is not just for those new to business continuity, nor exclusively for the most experienced planners and operators. It is designed for everybody with a risk mitigation role, which is associated with stress or disruption and recovery. The standard is about long-term continual improvement, as with most ISO standards. With this as the focus, the risk of treating business continuity as a one-time action greatly decreases, and that's where a lot of people have tripped up recently. It is clear to planning participants and their executive sponsors that recurring action is entirely necessary to enable alignment to key priorities and the expectations of interested parties. Overall, this standard was developed to address some of the most significant recurring obstacles that often lead to business continuity performance issues. specifically clarity of purpose and management engagement. The first three clauses of the standard provide a background regarding 22301. Clauses 4 through to 10 define the business continuity management system, and those who are aware of ISO structure will be familiar with the kind of wording used to describe the clause domains. This graphic you can see on screen now shows how the clauses align to the plan, do, check, act model in granular detail. Anybody with a functional ISO management system will be familiar with the plan, do, check, act cycle. Clause headings are fairly well established. The unique requirements for 22301, which perhaps you may not have encountered in other standards, are within the do or operations domain, and I've put a box around those now. Within this area, there are a number of requirements which contain terminology you may not be familiar with. Ultimately, you probably already have some understanding of what is required. The next logical step is committing this to a business continuity management system. I will outline a very broad example of 8.2 business impact analysis in the next slide. And this addresses one of the most commonly asked questions, though clearly does not give away a direct solution. As suggested right at the off, this presentation is an introduction to show you some of the features and benefits. There will be an implementation guide which goes into greater detail about what each of these domains mean and how to enact them within an organization. That's coming out soon, so please do keep in touch to ensure that you don't miss out. So this is a business impact analysis and risk assessment example. What is a business impact analysis? A business impact analysis is a critical step in developing a business continuity plan. Within this phase of your implementation, you are required to identify critical business operations. Further, consider related resources which are required for all employees to perform those functions. The specifics are set out in the standard. Please use the standard to ensure you cover all considerations. An effective impact analysis not only identifies all of these elements required, it employs data to prioritize business continuity efforts. Continuity concerns may present themselves on a scale. At the one end, you might have what you might call an inconvenience, which is something undesirable but ultimately manageable. At the other end is something disastrous and possibly irreparable harm. So when you're developing a business impact analysis, you have to make a distinction. Every department within an organization will naturally feel that they should be the focus of recovery, and that based on their perceived importance to an organization. However, if you resource inconvenience, that will be a drain on a limited number of resources, and that brings the need for data into the equation. When you conduct a business impact analysis, there are no template solutions which apply to every organization for every impact analysis undertaken. And that's why time spent planning is so vital before you implement. It allows a fully customized plan to be generated and all the risks which are identified to be mitigated effectively. So how do you develop a business impact analysis? So when you're developing an impact analysis, you need to look at each department or team or business unit within your organization. As you do that, consider three things. One is the timing or duration of an outage within that business unit, its operational impacts for being out, and the financial impacts of it being out. So for example, if a function cannot continue for an hour a day a week, how does this impact your service delivery or production? Now for customer-facing areas, that impact can be measured fairly easily, but in other areas, the costs might not be apparent. So you need to consider also things such as reputational loss, your relationship with employees, any relationships with vendors, and any legal or regulatory obligations you may have. Definitely don't assume these costs. In most cases, information will exist somewhere in the organization to provide a quantifiable figure associated with any given impact. Think about it long before it's needed. And that's a very quick preview of conducting a business impact analysis. As mentioned, I don't have the time within this webinar to scope out a full implementation for every area. But the most commonly asked question for people is, how do I conduct a business impact analysis in my experience? So I've tried to bring that to your attention. As I said, when the implementation guide is released, that will be something you can look at and hopefully ask questions over once you've seen that. For today though, let's move on and have a look at some of the benefits of implementation. Hopefully you've all seen benefits of having ISO certification already. Some of these are consistent in other standards and some are unique to 22301 as seen on the screen. Again, I say from recent experience, those who had 22301 in place were notably more effective in recovery than those who did not. I think that alone should encourage exploration of implementation for you or your client base. So is certification right for you? 22301 might be right for your organization if you are required to demonstrate to stakeholders, customers and third parties that your organization can rapidly overcome operational disruption to provide service. And some examples of that have been seen. If you, for example, work with a large customer, then they often will demand of you some kind of business continuity plan before they enter into a supplier agreement, for example. And having a certification in place will often take away those difficult questions and the need to answer those questions on every single occasion that you're asked. So how do you get certified? Now that you've been introduced, what do you do next? That information is on screen now. Don't worry about the notes so much in this slide. The webinar will be provided to you in full once the presentation is ended. However, the first step is to indicate that this is of interest to you by using the online quote request form or giving an NQA a call. Second step, once you've agreed that, we'll look at booking an assessment with the NQA assessment. And that's 2 visits, a stage 1 and a stage 2. To assess whether or not your system is ready to go. And then if you are successful on the end of that second stage, a certificate is issued and you have a certificate in place for 3 years. The screen now shows the transition period as indicated right at the start. There was an update to the standard in 2019 and therefore thereafter there's a 3-year transition period. So for existing customers, a transition period, you might not have been subject to that audit yet. However, ultimately what that means for you is shown on screen here. If you go for a new certificate, having not done this before, then you'll automatically be assigned to the 2019 scheme. And very quickly, one of the other provisions NQA have made recently is a COVID secure guideline. That's an independent verification that provides assurance to your organization that you've made sufficient measures to mitigate the transmission of COVID in your workplace in accordance with government guidelines. Some of the benefits are seen on the screen there. And certainly those customers who have sought NQA assistance in meeting this need have certainly seen the benefits and allowed themselves to return to work. Again, if that's of interest to you, then please reach out to the NQA sales team. And that's it. That's a very quick walk through the 22301 standard, what it means, some of the benefits, and a little look at the technical area. As I keep saying, this is something we're working on in terms of providing you with an implementation guide and a webinar and a blog. With the guide will accompany, so you'll have all of the resourcing you need to make that decision about whether it's right for you. And that'll be coming very, very soon. Just keep in touch with us. I regularly visit the website because as soon as it's available, we'll be putting it there. Clearly, the marketing team will also be in touch and let you know. So that's it for presentation-wise. If there are any questions about this or anything else, then I'll happily answer those now. So I think there's a couple of people, I'm not naming individuals, there's a couple of people who have asked the question about how integration with existing standards can be met. I'm going to go back to the one of the previous slides. So as I tried to bring to life on this slide here, there will be a lot of commonality. So let's think 9001, for example. There is a requirement to establish context and have a leadership-driven approach, plan risks and opportunities, make sure the system's supported. And the main area for difference between this and any other standard comes in the operational domain. So there are some specific operational functions you have to address, such as conducting a business impact analysis, which is what we went through during this presentation. So there will be a lot of overlap. So the need to do an internal audit and a management review, for example. If you already have an ISO system in place, then you can fold some of the requirements of 2231 into your existing structure, if you like, for the year. So the extra work really comes with understanding what you want to protect and how you're going to protect it, and then operational resilience as an operational process. Yeah, there is some work to do within the clause 8, which you perhaps might not have done or encountered before, but ultimately it would sit nicely alongside some other management systems. Now 27001, I did cover that during the presentation. 27001 does specify, somebody made a point about there is business continuity provisions in 27. There is, absolutely, but that's more to ensure information infrastructure and information processing and hosting can continue during times of resilience, not the actual business output itself. 22301 forces you to look at the whole thing more holistically. So what business functionalities do we need to keep going during times of stress? It's not just the information. The information aspect of that will be incorporated into 22301. But again, if you've got 27001 in place, then most of the work you need to done is probably already considered, and certainly some of the data you will need to make an effective quantitative business impact analysis will exist if you've got a 27001 in place. Okay, so yeah, Helen, good to speak to you. There are, as I said, it's not a question, but there are some good stats coming from BCI that confirm those with a plan have performed a lot better than those without, especially where the plan considers more than just IT. So I mentioned when I said that, to qualify, I don't have a source of information I can point at to say, look, this stats suggest that 22301 and business continuity organisations have done better than others, but Helen's very kindly said that BCI certainly have some statistics that would back up that claim, so thank you very much for that. Yeah, I did mention that there was a free copy of 22301, so clearly given the situation most of us found ourselves in back in March and early April, ISO made a decision to make viewable online only the 22301 standard. I don't have a link I can sort of type in just now, but if you want to drop me an email address with your request for the link to 22301, I will certainly and happily provide you with a direct link to where you can have a copy of the standard. There are a couple of questions about audit to conversion course, and the answer is not yet. There is something we've explored, but I don't have dates or times or indications of when we could do that. It is something we're looking at providing, though I am kind of blind to the resources available here, if you like, and certainly preempting this question, the answer I was told is we are looking at it, but nothing to tell you yet. I'm sorry. Okay. Can 22301 help reduce insurance premiums? My understanding is it's something you'd have to take up with your insurer to have in place. Some places I've audited have certainly suggested that is the case, but I can't give you a definite indication that that occurs across the board and in every circumstance. It depends on the nature of your business and what you do, the risks associated, and what your recovery plan looks like. There's a lot of moving parts there, but certainly if you are in a position where you think that might help, I would engage with your directly from your organisation to your insurer. So Emanuela asked me to elaborate on performance evaluation. So within the check area of the slide, which is on your screen there, it says you have a requirement to conduct performance evaluation, and that's quite simply is reviewing your management system once it's been implemented to check that it's functioning in the way you think it should be, and that's done by the use of internal audit and management review in the first instance, and then monitoring, measurement and analysis. And what that means is you've got key performance indicators and things like that for the management system, and you check to see if you are likely to achieve those things. So it's an internal audit management review process covers off the majority of work which is required in performance evaluation. But there are some other things such as KPIs or objective goals, whichever way you want to frame them, which you must do to make sure that the management system is functioning as intended. You're very welcome. So I think let me, because I've got a lot of requests for this there. I should have put my email on them. So I will put my email on this slide now. Once it works. So I've just put my email on the screen now. Let me go back to presentation. So my email is there. If you would like a copy of or a link to where ISO has made a free copy available for the 22301 standard, then please drop me a line. I'm afraid there's just too many people to capture them all at once. So just to make sure I don't miss anybody, if achieving a copy of the standard is something you would like to do, then by all means drop me a line. Yeah, a pleasure to meet and to engage with some familiar faces again. Thank you, Helen, for joining us. Have a great weekend. Just going to hold for another couple of minutes in case there are any other questions, or if I missed, then please re-engage if you like. If not, then I've just put my email on screen there. So if it's something you revisit next week or further down the line, then please do drop me a line. I've had a question about, yeah, sorry, yeah, sorry, Dan, yeah, you got lost in the crowd there. So 223106, sorry, 22316 explains the nature and scope of resilience, which helps an organisation to enhance their resilience. And organisational resilience is an ability to anticipate, respond, and adapt, etc., etc. It is an international standard which provides guidance to improve organisational resilience. Okay, guidance there. I don't think it's written for an auditable as an auditable standard, whereas 22301 is an auditable standard. So that's my understanding there. So. So Peter writes, we're an organisation where service outage of any kind is not an option. How does it fit into the impact assessment? When you do in your business impact assessment, you'll have to have a look at resourcing and available. Quite simply, if you cannot at any point have an outage, then your impact assessment has got to reflect that, and your response specifically. So what the operational area of the standard makes you do is indicate within a plan what your response is going to be and how are you going to address these things, and can you accept a certain level of loss. If you can't, then you need to resource that accordingly. So for example, if you need 15 seats in an office, then you have to have a spare 15 seats in an office to live in should your existing office go down. So when you're conducting your impact assessment, and the costs associated with that need to be folded in and signed off by management to indicate that they're happy with that. Otherwise, you're going to have some level of tolerance of outage if you cannot afford that. So, for example, that's why it's a lot of planning and adjustment and testing and verifying. So once you've got your plan, what you think, then when you test and verify that, you'll learn a few things, such as, oh, we couldn't do that. We couldn't switch from this channel A to channel B. So we might have to have another way of doing it. So yeah, again, once you conduct your business impact assessment, then you need to indicate that this is a function we cannot have out, and then resource that accordingly. Okay, guys, I think that's it in terms of questions. Like I said, if you sort of think of one later down the line, or need to know anything else from me about 27, 22301 or any other standards we do, then just drop me a line. Apart from that, have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather wherever you are, and we'll speak again soon.